a way better job at editing than I do. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Frivolous Gravitas. I believe this is episode 35, but we'll see. Maybe 36. We'll see. So today we're going to be looking at self-leadership, conflict resolution, and essentially managing your own life. For this, instead of Chris, who is indisposed at the moment on a secret special mission, probably for the CIA or MI6 or something, but we'll see. We're here with Jerry Fu, a certified conflict resolution coach and former pharmacist. So I almost wish my wife could be on here with us so she could.
Well, technically I'm working that pharmacist job, but hey, we can get into that later. Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, it's your current job is a little more interesting for us right now because you've done episodes on pharmacy. You can go in there and watch them and be like, oh, this is completely incorrect, blah blah blah. Anyway, so today we're going to look at what you do for a living specifically, which is presently you're a conflict resolution coach for the Asian Americans population. Now, what is a conflict resolution coach for the viewers? Because it sounds like conflict could be anything. This is sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. If you're ready for me to answer, I will go ahead and take the ball and start running with it.
Yeah.
So conflict resolution as a coach is to help people navigate conflict more effectively. Part of it is first to help people identify, what is it about conflict that bothers them? Really, the first step is to define what is conflict. And the simple definition that I use for a lot of people is basically mismatched expectations, right? At some point, there is some kind of difference or discrepancy in what you think is meant to happen and what's actually happening. Typically, this is seen easiest in work settings, right? If you're a boss and you say, hey, I need this report by 5:00 Friday, and they don't do it, now you have a conflict, right? It's just that simple. And so what I've seen in my own life and what I've seen in others' lives, especially ones who have backgrounds similar to my own, is that there seems to be a challenge with trying to engage in this conflict to resolve it in a way that doesn't result in finger pointing, antagonizing the other person, and just basically escalating the situation. And so
does this kind of happen mostly internally for the individual who's finding themselves in a conflict? Because you have the expectation, I want, and then you have the reality, which is, well, you can't have yet, or you have an expectation of the way reality is in itself. I think this should be like this, coming up against the reality of, well, no, you're not actually that good yet. So you have to, or you have to actually put the work in, which causes a kind of an internal conflict. You get that but it creates stress. Reality isn't what I want it to be. And this, I guess, can happen, like you said, in the workplace where, I didn't get the promotion. Now, generally, if you didn't get it for a good reason, well, the conflict is easily solved. Well, work harder, suck it up, and move forward. But then if it's not, then you have, litigation and stuff like that. But then the person, I'm assuming, would be left still in a state of that nagging disappointment. And some people take it better than others. For me personally, I remember my car was a subject of arson, and and I just kind of sat there going like, okay, this is my life now. And I didn't freak out. I was also 2 a.m, but I didn't really see the need to freak out. Maybe that's just kind of the way I am. Maybe it's because I had, my priorities have changed in this moment, and now I have to deal with that. But I know a lot of people who have that expectations, and it drives them internally to let these conflicts mount in some sort of pile of dissatisfaction. Hello there.
Yeah. He's good. Yeah, no, what you said is very true. Basically, what happens is that the conflict is usually internal first, right? I see this is my expectation. Something is not meeting that expectation. And now ultimately I'm the one who's bothered by it, right? Because the other person may or may not even realize that they're intruding on your expectations, right? That's usually the worst kind. Or even worse, they are, to your point about the arson in the car, right? They deliberately defy your expectations or even societal expectations, and then they make sure that you have no way of really engaging with them to actually try to resolve the situation, right?
So to them, it was probably just, to me, I think it was probably in that instance a cigarette butt that someone just was like, they threw it in the garbage bin, which is right beside there, which actually kind of makes sense rather than, fling it on the floor. So I can't even claim malice. So, which is nice. But like, if I'm in charge of people though, and I pick someone over another and someone says, well, we have a conflict, and I'm not in a position though to, say, well, that's tough. Like, I'm doing my job. You still have your job to do. Like, we both have our responsibilities. But then, me being blithe about that because I'm, not seeing this as a conflict creates more conflict. And you have internal things. And then, the individual or the opposite, why aren't my employees working as hard as they can? Well, maybe you're going too hard on them, or maybe you're doing this, or maybe you're doing that. Or maybe you're not, or maybe you're wasting their time too much with meetings, which could be emails.
Yeah.
So, this seems like a very, like, we seem to be sticking to the professional now. So this is the conflict, and conflict arises, like you said, through mismatched expectations. That's really a good way of putting it, because we all expect something, but then reality. Well, I'm a historian, so a lot of history is, people being surprised by the thing that they could never have guessed happening to them. And so reality is always going to surprise you. Wait 5 years, you will not have guessed what happened. I guarantee you. And this goes for us in the real world. So that's the conflict. Now, how does one move from a mismatched expectation and bring an individual into line?
Yeah, it's a great question. So sometimes, so there's kind of three, or at least three ways come to mind, and maybe I adjust this list as we talk through it, but there's a couple different ways to deal with conflict. Not all of them are effective, right? The first is avoidance. Not effective.
Not effective at work.
Yeah, no, does not. Especially if you know that you're part of a conflict, or if you don't know, or, especially if you know you're part of it and you're just like, whether you're the one who perpetrated the conflict and you're just trying to avoid whatever consequences may come of it, or if you're the one that needs to resolve it and you're just like, oh, maybe that fire will go out on its own. Doesn't work. Right.
No.
Just stick your head in the sand. No, there's no problems. I don't see any. I don't hear anything. No. Sometimes you may just have to lower your expectations. And, if it's not a fight that's worth having, especially if the relationship is not critical, you may just have to just get over yourself. I mean, that's the frank way of saying it, because I'll give an example. So at my day job, we work next to a CBD store that's also owned by the same people.
CBD?
Cannabinoids.
Okay. That's what I thought it was. Okay. I don't know if you guys are allowed to have that in the States yet. In Alberta, we've had, in Canada, we've had access to cannabis since 2019 or 18. Nice. So turns out it didn't change anything. Funny that.
Yeah, that's what we're learning. It's just like, well, hey, it might work. And placebo apparently is very expensive. So, that's fine if people
it's just now there's stores where there weren't before. It's like, oh no.
Exactly. So. Yeah, pretty much. And anyway, all that to say is that, so the guy who works there, for whatever reason, he goes through like a roll of toilet paper in like a week. And, I'm the one buying this stuff. So I know exactly how much I need to spend of company money, just because this guy uses, like, in a day's worth, the trash can will be filled with paper towels. I'll have to replace another roll of toilet paper. And I'm sitting there thinking, why is this guy using so much, right? So in my expectation, I think he's being wasteful. If he, in his eyes, right, he's not doing anything wrong. Right? Yeah, he's just like, I'm just me, I need this much to, keep myself clean, fine. And so, and I've vented to several people about this, where it's just kind of like, he has no regard for the fact that someone else is taking care of this, right? And at the same time, right, I don't really have a working relationship with him, right? To say, hey, man, could you maybe like dial down like the resources that you're wasting here? Because, in my eyes, like you don't need 20 paper towels to dry your hands. Right?
Buy him a handkerchief for his birthday.
Yeah. Buy your own cloth, or at least chip in, for the cost that I'm single-handedly spending money on your, bathroom habits. And so in this case, this is just something in this case, right? Like the fight is not big enough to really, this is not the hill I want to die on. Right?
No.
And so in this case, I just need to stop and just say, hey, well, if it just costs the company a little extra money to keep this guy, happy with paper towel use, fine. We'll just.
Well, if you use this business, just be like, hey, could I get a 5% discount? I've been supplying TP forever, so.
Exactly, right. You owe me something, right? Yeah. And so, so the other really for a relationship that is meaningful is to really just find 10 seconds of courage and, approach with open hands and curiosity and say, hey, can I ask you about this? Because here's what I'm seeing, right, for this situation. And I was wondering if you could help me figure out what I'm missing or to help me understand something that I'm not seeing here. Because as of right now, I'm a little confused. I feel fairly upset, because there are consequences for not having met these expectations. My boss needs this report because this leads to other things. And, now we're losing revenue because this report was not turned in on time. So, yeah.
Your business, not a charity.
Exactly. So, yeah. Stuff needs to get done. Well, that's what we're paying you for.
You use the word courage. And I think this is one of the very important aspects is because a lot of times, a lot of what you need to do while you're in conflict, the root is confrontation. And so you need to actually confront, stand up, go over there and confront, because, well, it's not going to get resolved. Like avoidance is okay. If I have problems with someone in Manitoba right now, but they're in Manitoba, so I'll deal with it when I'm in Manitoba. But,
absolutely.
Because Manitoba's like the Oklahoma of Canada, but, don't quote me. But that
it's
courage,
being recorded is cool.
Everything's up. That courage that someone needs to actually stand up, and it does take courage, that first step. But one thing I noticed when I was younger, I was a bit of a, I'm young, I don't know how to resolve conflict, but I found that if I could just take that first step and be a bit, puff my chest out for half a second, and it just got easier every single time. Because the alternative was the conflict mounts stress upon you. Conflict does actually take, a toll upon you. And confronting it wastes, it seems like it takes a lot of energy, and it does, but it wastes a lot less energy long term with better results. You might accidentally build a bridge with somebody, who knows? Or you could just have them out of your mind. Like, so I got in the habit of just like, this is a problem, I'm going to deal with it now. I needed x-rays and stuff, and they're like, oh, we can get you in on July 28th. And I just went into the x-ray place. It was like, you're going to do this now. It's like, I got it done that day, and I got all my stuff done that day because I was just showed up and they didn't want the conflict. And I was almost relying on the fact that these people didn't want conflict. I wasn't like, I was just being like, I need this done. My heart.
It's finesse. Yeah,
you're
just like, hey, man, I'm here. Like,
I don't want to deal with this. I don't want this hanging over my head for a month while I'm sitting there being like, oh, I'm so tired. So I just went and did it. And
good.
A lot of people, but that's the thing. That's not easy. I'm 36 now, and I practice that a lot. And it's even good, but that is not an easy thing. Even now, sometimes it's just like you're sitting there, no one's watching. You're just like, okay, I can be a bit of an ass. I can do this. But not too much of an ass, but a bit. And you walk in and be like, this is what I want. And they're like, okay. And you're just like, oh, that was way too easy. And oftentimes
you're
it is.
dying 1,000 deaths before you even try it. It's like, you're already rejecting yourself even before you even ask the girl out, right? Like,
and well, that's the thing. But the thing is that I have the courage, but I know the battlefield. I know what I want. And if your boss is bugging you and you have a bad expectation, like generally, do you see people that have an expectation that's just like, I want things to be better, or I want what I'm owed, or I want more money, or these vague things that don't actually mean anything. Does that come up a lot?
Yeah, I mean, this is the world as I think it should be, and for whatever reason, the world is not handing it to me on a silver platter, right? And then just there's a sense of entitlement that is entirely helpless and useless, right? People think, well, it should be this way. It's like, well, you might be right, but they have the opportunity to disagree with you, you know, and it doesn't mean that they're right, but what are you going to do about it? Right?
Yeah.
Are you just going to say humph and stomp your foot and say, well, I shouldn't have to change. I shouldn't have to take the initiative, or are you actually going to do something about it? But in a way that does not enable the other person, right? And to keep their bad habits. Because, I went through a hero phase for a while where I was like, I am capable. I'm going to solve problems as I see them. And I'm picking up all this trash, right? That's like, well, I hate litter. Well, yeah, I'm not helpless. Let me go throw it away. Guess what? The person who threw it there doesn't care, right?
No.
You're just like, oh, right. Oh, someone else is picking up my trash for me. Great. I don't have to change. I don't have to worry about that. And that was really one of the turning points in my development as a leader, when recognizing, hey, if I'm compensating for this person, now I'm working 2 jobs and they're just doing nothing.
Right. Well, I do the same thing around my neighborhood, but I do it for me. I'm paying myself because I want a beautiful neighborhood. That's so fair. And it's like, well, I'm not going to beautify your house, but it makes my house look good. So that's why I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And plus it just bugs me. It's like, I don't know. You have
standards. Celebrate that.
But sorry, I lost what I was going to say, but the like, sorry, I took a poor note here. So a lot of what we're talking about conflict wise is professional, getting what you want and stuff like that. And you have to, well, first of all, okay, that was it. Sorry, Chris, edit that stumbling out, or don't call it a gag, put some like stuff around it. But people see their life as, a lot of times what you described seemed like a kind of a fight between realizing that you don't have to end up in a zero-sum game, that you don't have to be playing something where you're the victim, where you can go in and say, okay, I don't think I'm getting what I'm owed, but at the same time, it's because, what can I do to make it give me more? Because what you can do, like if you're at work, you don't think you're being utilized enough, ask them how. I want to be paid more. And they're like, okay, then do more. And it's like, okay, but what? So like if it's not zero sum, everyone benefits from you solving this conflict that you think. And you end up better. But when you think in a zero sum, and I've met as a few people like this in my family where it's like, it's either me or you or nothing else. It's just like, we're a family. Like that's not a thing. Like, so what you end up doing is you have to end up negotiating, and that again takes courage, but it also takes the necessary step of needing to know what you want. And I feel like, well, I ask all my students this right at the beginning, like, what do you want? Why are you here? Like, my parents told me to be here. It's like, so
thank them for paying me,
yeah, I'm going to do my job, but one of the things you need is all action has to come with direction, or it's pretty much wasted action. You get that.
True.
Aurelius talks about this a lot. The great Stoic emperor. You get people, a lot of modern people are talking about this now too. But resolving this conflict is never going to not take energy. So I'm kind of rambling here. So one thing I want to do is get on to, so you mentioned, we were talking before that, and we're talking a lot about professional coaching or professional conflict resolution. You are having a conflict in the work, and whatever you think your mismatched expectations make you are making you dissatisfied with your professional life in one way or another. But you also mentioned cultural conflict resolution, and and this seems like a bit of a different ball game. What kind of cultural conflicts come up in your work?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, part of it is simply There's a quote from an Eric Barker book called Barking Up the Wrong Tree, where he reevaluates the idea of what success is. And one of the regrets of the dying that he mentions is, I wish I lived a life true to myself instead of what others expected of me. And, I can only speak for Asians, but that's exactly what we find, right? I can appreciate my parents' perspective when they came over here from Taiwan, where they said, hey, we need money and credibility. And the quickest way to do that is to become a doctor or engineer or accountant, right? Some of these high median income jobs with a degree where people have to address you, as doctor or some kind of specialist, right? And so that's their definition of the good life, right? You get good grades in school, you get the high paying job, you bank away money aggressively for 20 years. And maybe if you're lucky, as long as you don't have too many life interruptions, you can retire at a fairly young age and finally get to do what you want because you finally have all that money. Oh, and by the way, get married and have kids and pass along the family name.
It's a high build.
Yeah, right. You're just like, check. All right, now what? And so, kind of to something we referenced earlier, right? I remember one of my other Taiwanese friends that I went to school with, right? He went the biology or bioengineering route because he really wasn't that sure what he wanted to do. And even as he's pursuing this PhD, he has aunts and uncles asking him, well, you're smart enough. When are you going to take your MCAT? Like, you need to do this. I don't understand why you don't see this as the right path for yourself, right? And so you have this cultural expectation, hey, bring, honor to the family name, take away the shame, even as we use that shame to push you to the honor side of things. And all of a sudden, same thing on the personal level. When are you going to get married? Okay, you got married. When do you have a kid? All right, finally. When do you have another one? It's like, why do you need me to have kids? Is it just what benefit do you get from that?
In I guess white Canadian culture, it's not too different. Yeah. I do get from my my parents and grandparents like kids. But like the thing is that I don't see it as kind of like I want kids. And I think in some ways the problem there seems to be that's the key thing. I want children, and I want children not because to uphold the family honor, which I actually do care about. Everyone thinks that white people are like, oh, we're so cynical about everything. No. Honor gets a lot of short shrift nowadays. Okay, I can't make that example on in public, but it's just there's. Tell you after, but it's not dirty or anything. It's just
okay.
It's a little weird.
We have a term. Quick tangent. Me and some friends have a term called battleship, where we're just like, oh, got to contain that battleship, and so we just got to keep that. We're just like, no, we're gonna keep that in here. It doesn't matter what it is. We're just gonna keep that in here. Yeah. Leave it up to your imagination, but we're gonna keep it here. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but I do it, and I earn honor through my self-interest. Okay, that sounds very evil, but like I'm doing it. But I'm not. I'm myself as an individual, but I'm also myself in my family. I'm also myself in my culture. I'm also myself in my city, in my province, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And how I earn that honor? Well, you know what? A lot of Asian families, I've seen this with a lot of Asian families, and the work ethic is extremely commendable. I definitely salute, but it's not, there's no time where they're saying this is for me, so I can use that. And the other thing is that, yes, it is a quick way and an easy way. It's a nice, simple path, and it is a good path. Mm-hmm. But it's not the only one. I decided when I went back to university, I need to find something. Yeah, I need to get something where I'm employable and where I'm this and that. Took a psychology degree. Okay, this is neat. I could be a psychologist. I got the chops for this. Took a history class, and I was like, oh no, this is what I need to do. and that's not, we can't usually, it's not the best idea also to follow that. But I thought I had to think, well, I'm taking this, and I was glowing the entire time. I'm doing a lot of work. I'm finding a lot of motivation just in the mere what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And this brought myself a sense of self-respect. So I felt that this gave me honor in a way. And we don't like, oh, well, what is honor? It's like honor is the self-respect. It's the social capital that people say. So you see a soldier and they have honor in society. Why? Because they're willing to sacrifice, because they're putting themselves in a position of sacrificial responsibility. And that's honorable. A doctor is honorable because, well, it's an honorable profession. You're not stealing from people. You're, helping. Firemen. You're taking on responsibility in order to provide honor. And well, you can earn honor on, like, there's no point anymore to earn honor on the battlefield. That was a lie of 200 years ago. Like, no one, if you believe that now, well, read a bit more. So,
we have drones now where we can outsource to machines to fight for us. Absolutely.
Yeah. How many machines? Well, there's a Star Trek episode that kind of said, no. That's another episode, though.
Absolutely.
If we get the machines to fight for us, then it might be too easy to start these wars again.
Just rock'em sock'em, man. Just battle bots over and over again. Just do that. Yeah.
So,
it's easy.
But for me personally, I found lately that, like, I've been doing LSAT questions and I thought, I could become a lawyer. I'm like 36. It'd be 10 years before I made any money and I wouldn't enjoy any of it. And I'm making actually half decent money now being self-employed. Yeah. And it's just like, okay, I can create honor in my own way, but it takes effort. It takes that courage. And, okay, I'm hyping myself up here. Yeah, I'm awesome. No, you have your weak moments though, and you're sitting there going, I don't know how to do this. You're bashing your head on the thing. Yeah. You get through it. And it's that brings honor to yourself, that expenditure for a goal. But if you do it for your own self, if you're not doing it for yourself so that you can be better able to help those around you, then it does seem hollow. And everyone does make fun of the Asian population for it. And it's all tongue in cheek. And it's not racist because we know they're working hard. And
stereotypes are there for a reason. It's
a respectful thing. I'm sure there's jokes about white people and they are probably hilarious. But the self honesty about it is definitely good, but it is still a good path. It's not like, all right, step 1, take drugs. Step 2, form a gang. No, okay. This isn't what's happening. So it's not a bad thing. But when you have to deal with that cultural thing, say, I guess where the conflict comes up, whereas all of a sudden you have one expectation of others and the expectation of yourself changes. I definitely had to explain why a history degree actually gave me, earning potential to my future in-laws. That was a conversation I did have, and it was a good conversation to have. And I was just like, "Don't worry, I'm going to work hard." But it might have been a harder conversation to have if my wife was of a different culture. Well, I was like, well, that's not good enough. I need concrete proof, or I need this or that. Yeah. And I chose the show through action instead of, maybe I'll make money. And, step 2, step 3 will be profit. Don't worry about it. So I guess what I'm building to is that's one form of cultural conflict that you can have.
Yeah.
And I can see, I do want to touch into this a bit more, but is there intercultural conflict that individuals face as well? Like everyone's talking about racial tension and everything, but does this happen? Not getting hired for being one color or another, but are there more? So not asking. I feel like that was a leading question, but I don't want it to be a leading question because. Okay. Is there intercultural conflict that you have coached people with? And what's the nature of that generally?
By default, it is a conflict. Because one culture has this set of expectations, the other culture has this set of expectations. And then you have all sorts of prejudices and implicit bias and all sorts of other stuff. And just throw that all in the mix and just pray it doesn't blow up on you, in the first 30 seconds, right? Yeah. Yeah. To give a quick illustration, right? While I've not directly coached people through intercultural conflict, it's not hard to see, right? You know, for instance, one of my friends I know through church is black, and his wife is white, and by default, boom, conflict, right? And he tells me these things about how, you know, he has to deal with the fact, number one, not only does his personality and interest not line up with her side of the family, right? He knows what kind of prejudices that they probably have hiding underneath the surface because he is a black male. Even though he is soft-spoken and mild-mannered, right? I'm sure there's people who think he's dangerous. And I mean, Asians are guilty of it as well, right? Growing up, my mom told me, don't date a black woman, just straight up, just don't do this. And then, and the only reason people haven't mentioned it more is that we're not the ones killing them. We're not the ones killing them through the justice system, whatever else.
We don't, in Canada, we have a similar problem where it's not really like with the indigenous population, which is a bit more substantial up here. A lot of the black people in Canada were either empire loyalists who were like, well, America's doing this, I'm out, or escaped slaves. So a lot of them have been here long enough that they wear nicer suits than me. So, but we do get a lot of bleeding from that. And I feel like I personally, like, it might have been harder and I would have had to deal with a lot of stuff. Like, I was very poverty stricken when I met my wife. Yeah. And so I had to say, like, don't worry, I will have money later. I'm actually in school. My ex was Latin American, and I had to definitely show that, I'm not a lazy white guy. So, or I'm not just a, Canadian yuppie. And I was just like, no, I have plans. Don't worry, I've got plans. Yeah. Though a lot of that was religious tension because I wasn't Catholic.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. That's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I would have been able to get over that one. I don't think I could have beaten that one, but you don't win every battle.
No, you don't.
So, now racial tension is, to me, it seems like it's a lot of, like you said, implicit bias, which is kind of a heated word. Yeah. And it assumes more than it actually means because of that test that they made that doesn't work. But a lot of people do have assumptions about other people that seem to be coming from a place of, I'll use the diplomatic term ignorance, which is a nice term for stupid. They don't know. And they don't know. And so they make an assumption. And it's easy to classify something you don't know. Like if someone said, oh, people from Uzbekistan are like this. I'm like, I don't know anyone from Uzbekistan. How do you know that? So if I wasn't as critical as I am of everything, then I might just accept that and go with it. And I'd tell my friends, be like, oh man, I met this guy, he's from Uzbekistan, and they're this and that. And it's just like, so, then that spreads. And then someone from Uzbekistan comes in and is like, hey, you guys have a sushi joint around here. I'm like, oh, this guy's normal.
Yeah.
It's more Canadian than me. But, and so you do have to get through that. But a lot of, it seems to me that it's not insurmountable. Now, your friend in an interracial relationship, he's got to deal with these hurdles, but the hurdles aren't insurmountable. Now,
they aren't.
Is avoidance a good path here? You find somebody who's just, irreconcilably on this camp, and then you can just be like, well, I'm just never going to talk to that guy.
Yes.
His internal conflict is too black and white. No pun.
That was too perfect. No, I mean, in this case, right? Yeah. I mean, it's part of it is just wisdom and saying, okay, do I have the energy? Like, is this an important enough relationship where I actually have to engage in something? Because it's one thing if it's just like the crazy uncle that you meet at a barbecue and you only see him once a year, not worth your time.
My wife's grandma talking about certain Middle Eastern populations. It's just like, well, she's like 84 and not really, but it's like, okay, like we'll just disagree.
Like grandma be grandma. Yeah.
And so
grandma's filters off. We're just going to have to let her do it. Absolutely.
So is this why you mainly focus on Asian American Sounds weird to say Asian American because I'm
Okay.
Canadian. Asian American population as your clientele.
Yeah. So basically, right, in coaching, when they ask us, hey, what is your ideal client? Usually the ideal client is just whoever you were 10 years ago, right? And needing the same kind of guidance that you needed. And so a big mistake a lot of new coaches make is, they ask you, well, who do you help? And you say, oh, everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like boring, like who do you really have a heart for? And
it's like
it's
the
not,
old Kurt Vonnegut quote where he's like, well, don't write for everybody. If you leave the window too wide open, then you're going to get pneumonia. So
he had some truth. Yeah. Slaughterhouse-Five was a mandatory reading book through high school. And do I appreciate it though? But yeah, basically, right. I know what kind of bad or well-meaning, but ultimately misguided approaches to conflict I picked up on from my parents, and then just from my own fear of failure. And at some point, to what we said earlier, right? At some point, you can't afford to tolerate that anymore, because now you just hate yourself, and you're just frustrated that why didn't I at least speak my mind? Even if this friendship goes to crap, at least they know where I stand on things. At least I went down swinging somewhat.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, when I remember, here's a specific situation where I got bad advice from my mom that I ultimately took. At one point, a Pakistani Muslim friend of mine was dating a Christian Asian woman, which, is already a recipe for complicated situations. And he came to me for advice on what scripture to cite in trying to get her back.
Which means that he's going to go and lie.
Pretty much. It's just anytime you just, cut out things for your own context, I mean, you're lying, right? And so he copied me in on the email he sent her and cited all the scripture, and I lost it. Like my mom was reading with me at the time because this was in college, right? And I remember my mom was reading with me, and I was just like, I can't believe he sliced all this up just to build this missile that I did not want to actually help him build. It's like, I don't want to help you build an atom bomb, but that's exactly what you did with the resources I gave you. And my mom's just like, oh, no. He's your friend. Don't say anything. Please just don't say anything. It's just not worth it. And go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's a friend isn't there to, just tell you everything is right. It's essentially an employee. And a friend is there to be like, dude, stop.
Yeah.
So we can because friends are there to we need to keep going together on this thing. It's a stopgap or something. And there to, help someone get to the airport in the middle of the night. But
always handy.
always handy. But you can't. Well, that's kind of part of it, is listening to your gut there a bit, which a lot of people think is some metaphysical, it's this intuition that we innately have, or the sixth sense. No. We take in a lot of information from our surroundings, and we can't process it all, obviously. So sometimes your brain's like, oh, this isn't quite right. Something's wrong here. And that's a good thing of telling you why. And then you examine the data that you're not looking at and be like, oh, so that's what your gut is, it's your body having a response to something that is not in line with reality.
Good.
Kind of in the Stoic sense again. So I guess it's not jiving with the logos. So one way to put it. So does this come from you? So you have intimate knowledge with the Asian American population. Is that something you use because a lot better what their problems might be than I would? I can just go in there and be like, well, you should do this. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. I mean, it's in coaching. What's funny is either you want someone who is entirely familiar with your situation, that's been down this road and has skinned their knees on the same thing and knows exactly what to point out or what to shine a flashlight on, things like that. Or you want someone who has no frame of reference, right, as to what you're dealing with, because now someone can come with fresh eyes and isn't already kind of biased towards your cultural lens or anything like that. And so it's just kind of funny how you just want one or two of the extremes. Either you get someone like me and says, oh, hey, another Asian says, oh, he's Asian. He knows what it's like to have my color skin and knows what kind of, the challenges that come when people see and how I present myself, right? Like one of the questions I got first off when someone met me was, what kind of engineer are you? Right? Like people already have assumptions just from right off the bat. Right?
Behavioral engineer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Perfect answer. Or you just have someone who's just like, yeah, you want someone who has no idea and just is able to be curious from the start and recognizes that humility is actually a good thing. It doesn't, you need like the ignorance, like the lack of knowledge is not so much the bad thing. It's just the lack of awareness, right? It's one thing for someone to say, I don't know anything about your situation, but let me learn and tell me about it so I can explore it with a higher sense of humility and curiosity that might actually uncover some useful things because they're not handicapped to, or they're not strapped to your cultural lens. Right. Yeah.
So it's going in with, okay, there's two forms of approach there. There's here's what I did and with this context and with this thing. And okay, we need to, and the other one would be like, okay, we need to build you a schema to deal with reality because you obviously don't have one. And that seems to make a lot of sense. I remember being like, I think about myself 10 years ago and I'm just like, what an idiot. And I think about myself even 10 years before that. Yeah. And it's, the word is cringe. So, and I have this innate, almost, I guess, disgust with what I used to be, this ignorant, time-wasting fool. And I would probably, if I was in your position, I'd probably need to get over that a bit, but like, I'm aware of it at least.
Yeah.
And so, but does this come from a place of, I don't know, compassion, or is it you don't want to see people making the same mistakes sort of thing?
Technically it's both. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Because part of it is, like I know, I wish that there's literature I wish I'd read, I just read now that I wish I'd read 20 years ago. My mom got most of it right. She had me read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is, a classic self-development book. But the one that I also wish I'd read was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Because like, if I had read that, like when I was coming out of high school, I probably could have saved myself a lot of headache in college about like learning to be more effective and using my time well and, cutting out distractions, things like that. But it is very much for compassion, just to say, hey, look, there are a lot of good intentions when it comes to, bringing up your kids and raising them in a way where they're responsible and proactive. But there's a lot of tactics they use to get kids to that point that leave them with a lot of emotional scars that probably aren't healthy. And so, on one hand, I want to spare people some of the things that I had to deal with to get to this point. And it is not from a sense of, well, I'm bitter and, don't go here. It's like, no, let me come alongside you and say, hey, there's a better way. And let's explore that together. Absolutely.
So, simple question, but probably needs a long answer though. Sure. Can you help somebody who's resisting being helped?
That's a great question.
Because I can't teach someone who, if someone doesn't want to listen, they turn off their mic, they turn off their thing. I can't, I could, okay, so this book is about this. What did you think of it? Oh, I don't know. It was interesting. It's like, oh, jeez. It's like, okay, there's nothing I can do here. And like, I try to get it in and I don't know. I feel bad about collecting the paycheck almost, but you have integrity. But if you get someone who say comes to you because their family sent them to you, and like psychologists have this happen. I'm assuming they have this, or someone comes to them.
Referral system that's not that great.
Or the government sends them to the psychologist.
Remediation, right? Yeah.
And so, but you are a little more specialized in that manner. So if someone comes and they just don't want to be helped, what do you do? Yeah,
great question. Because if it is, Like, it depends. Like, if it's someone like on the clock, right, where it's like, hey, I'm here because HR sent me and we just have to deal with that. You know, basically, I would at the very least give them a chance, right? Because you don't want to assume from the start that, oh, no, lost cause. Like, to just write them off from the beginning involves a sense of judgment that is contrary to what coaching is, right? And at the same time, right, know your limits. Part of it is, okay, hey, you know what? Why don't we try us out for like 3 sessions or 1 to 3 sessions, and then you put the ball in their court is, I guess, my initial response to your question.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is that basically you want to trust the idea that the client is the expert on his or her own life. The clients know their lives better than you know them.
Mm-hmm.
And you give them the decision whether or not they want to continue, right? Because now it's not about whether or not I cut them off prematurely or I let them linger too long. It is entirely in their wheelhouse to decide, do I like this? Is this beneficial? Yes. Okay. Do you want to do another session? Yes. Okay. How do we schedule that? Right. And there are times where you may have to override things to just say, hey, look, there's some things that have come up. Either I'm no longer qualified to help you, or I feel like you're not being receptive to my voice. So I'm at least going to refer you to somebody else, even if, and I think that's really the truest test. Like, do you just cut them off and let them kind of float into space? Or are you going to say, hey, here's someone I can refer that might be better suited to help you? Yeah.
You give them an outlet, you give them a different path and let them take it, whether or not it's not your responsibility to run their life. Exactly. The coach doesn't play hockey. He's sitting on the bench. So, I got a couple questions, but a lot of it seems to be, and to me, a lot of this is, I guess, what do a lot of your clients seem? Because to me, a lot of it, and the thing that drives me now after I've, gotten competent, I was definitely potential, but incompetent before. And I just, at one point I was just like, I was doing menial labor, which, I can't discount, but I was mixing paint and I just said, I need to go back to school. This is not, this is not sustainable for my life. And so I learned that one thing I was doing was I was just wasting time. And most of everything that I was doing wrong came down to me wasting time in the end. So like, not reading, I'm not using my time properly. I'm stuck in a job that's not teaching me anything. That's wasting time. Well, you're making money. It's yes, but I'm still wasting my time.
That's true. Wow.
And so everything came down to that. And to me, being stuck in a conflict is essentially wasting your time. Well, I don't like this. So you're going to brood over it. And that's an hour you don't have anymore. So, I hate this. I can't believe my wife did this or this did that. It's just like, I don't know. You're wasting your time where you could be doing something else. So I came up with some ways of dealing with stuff. And it was just like, pretty much just like, this isn't a problem was a big one.
You're like, I just need to tell myself this over and over again. And
which is, I guess that's just a form of cognitive behavioral therapy where it's just like, oh, I hate this. Wait, this isn't actually a problem, but people do actually have legitimate problems. And and I did. But what do most of your clients, what do you see most of their things that are causing their conflict being? Because for me, it was just, I was making decisions based on bad advice and I was just staying bitter about stuff. And I ended up being a bit of a fire-breathing soapbox socialist for a bit. But I detailed that in a different one, why I left. But that was me. And that's one thing that I've noticed is that what I did works for me. So I'm wondering, is that there are universals, but do you see that there's a kind of are there any themes to your profession that you seem to be seeing across like all of your patients? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Great question. I mean, because if I think about the topics that my clients have come to me with, it's I think the irony is that I think we do all want some idea of the good life, right? We want to feel like we know the best foods to eat, the best countries to travel to, the best products to buy, the best way to really enjoy ourselves. But not in a hedonistic way, but just in a way that really, as you said, right, I am not simply working on myself just to feel good about myself. I really want to be present and spend time on activities and people that are meaningful to me.
Yeah,
right?
There's a difference between hedonism and Epicureanism. One is just being like pleasure. The other one is enjoying your life.
Yeah.
That means maintaining relationships and working a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so because I think about why did my first client ask me about how to have a conversation with his boss to protect his career path? Because, right, it's the benefits that come from being employed that allow him to, work on, in his free time, trying to figure out, hey, I want to work on an investment portfolio so that I can free up time so that I can spend more time on, I'm not in this 9-to-5 grind, right? Tim Ferriss is a great example of, trying to get people to realize, hey, what is the new rich? The new rich is not a lot of money in the bank and you're like killing yourself to get it. The new rich have flexibility and autonomy in their lives and they can travel when they want.
That's something I discovered when I was poor. Stress. When I got money, I realized it's like, well, how much money do you have? It's like, right now I have enough. And after a while, you stop getting the money stops being useful after a certain amount. So I stopped caring about that. It's like, well, okay, what's going to make me rich next? And now I'm thinking children will make me rich. Not like money wise, but they'll enrich my life.
Fair enough. Yeah,
and
that's true.
Well, it's like, and then, we'll raise them properly and then I'll have all this meaning and I'll have a reason to do that. And then, they can start, paying for my stuff. No, just kidding.
No, there is a long game involved. And a lot of Asian Americans are dealing with this right now.
Don't put me in a home.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Well, it's like, these parents why do you think they're getting this? Why do you think they're making these kids go to, profitable professions? Because at some point they're expecting that money to take care of them once they retire, because they may or may not be actually, saving up for retirement. They're just like, no, I'm counting on my kids to take care of me. And that's why my mom pushed me to get married and have kids as well, which right now I have neither. And neither marriage nor kids, but the point being, right. She's like, who's going to take care of Jerry when he gets old? You have to have kids because they're the only ones you can count on, because that's family. Blood is thicker than water. And that's why she hangs on to that. Right.
Yeah. I got married in spite of family. Well, in spite of 1/3 of my family.
Nice.
But it's, I did that because it was right. And I feel like one thing is like, well, I got married. Why can't anyone else do this? And one thing I think is good to know is that I got lucky. I got really lucky, but I got lucky because I put the work in. I said, okay, this is a good woman. Okay, I have a conflict. I'm single. And so I went out and did the awkward, dance that we all do. But it's, now I think this gets to one of the other themes, a really awkward segue, is that I feel like a lot of people have a feel of leave that in, Chris. Just, I need to work on my speaking. A lot of people have a fear of failure. And does this hold people back? Just like, oh, I can't try because, and I remember not taking a test once in high school because I was just like, I can't go. People will see me taking a test. It's like, what the stupid stuff was that? But I think failure isn't what it's cracked up to be. And I think failure has taught me more than anything else. And
that's a great teacher. Yeah.
And do you find that failure or this fear of failure holds people back a lot? Because you think about, you're playing a video game or something, and you don't want to get hit once. And you want a perfect playthrough. You don't want to take one loss. You don't want to lose 1 point or something like that. And because you don't want to feel that bad, but in life, you kind of have to. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here. Sorry.
It's okay. That's fine.
Trying to get to it. But for me, a lot of it seemed like what I was afraid of was success, because I knew I wasn't good enough at the time.
Fair enough.
But do you find that a lot of people hold themselves back in your profession?
Yeah, I mean, I was guilty of it for, 34, 35 years of my own life. And so I say, what I tell people, I was like, look, this is just one beggar telling other beggars where to find good bread, because I'll be the first to admit my own self-imposed beliefs that kept me from really experiencing growth and enjoyment, that comes with long-term success. And so the examples, they're all over the place. Cooking is something I didn't learn until how to really cook, and things I looked forward to eating until like I was in my mid-30s after I moved out of the house. And you just have this idea of, I don't want to embarrass myself, and I don't want to eat crappy food that I cooked, and I can't believe this. But with cooking, what's funny is that if you mess up at home, no one's making fun of you unless you just want to beat yourself up needlessly, right? So it's not the failure that's the problem. It's what people think of you when you fail. And if you have learned to block out people's opinions who do not have your best interest in mind, right? Once you get past that point and say, hey, I'm not here to impress anybody, I'm just here to get better at it, it's a lot better. But I mean, for me, dating was a terrible thing to navigate, because part of it was just, lack of self-esteem and my own insecurities, because it's like, and you felt like, oh, if a girl said yes to me, oh crap, what if she finds out that I think I'm unattractive? And
what if I don't have anything to say? What if I have to actually be interesting?
Yeah, right. And you're like, you just have this imposter syndrome. You're just like, oh no, this success, I don't deserve it. I'm just going to flush it, or, just not return a call and just like cancel the date so I don't have a chance of embarrassing myself. And yeah, I mean, an extreme example is there a guy I used to go to church with, and he would complain about not being married. And then, we'd ask him, well, when are you going to ask out a girl? Well, I'm not supposed to, you don't want to like mess up your social circles by asking a girl out in those circles. And, and
like, that's a good excuse.
Yeah, it's
that's
great.
all it is.
Yeah. Are you, so what's your next action? Like, I wish you could just be honest and say, I hate rejection and conflict, and I hate, I feel like I'm worthless unless I have the affections of a pretty woman. Like, I would at least respect that honesty, because that's what I had to admit to myself. I'm just like, I hate rejection and conflict, and I don't like the fact that, if I make myself as attractive as possible and this girl still says no, somehow I just want to throw all that away, right? As opposed to saying, hey, you know what? If I like my life and she says no, I still like my life, right? But if she is the vehicle to the happiness that I feel like I'm missing out on, that's a lot of pressure on her.
No, that's actually a very good point that you made there. You're this external locus of meaning and incrimination. So if you're relying outside of yourself for these things, that generally seems to me to be the wrong thing. I go on a date. Oh, she doesn't like me. Oh, whatever. I don't need her to inform the value of my life. My life is what it is. It's their job to take it or leave it. And like, I know I'm going to change no matter who I'm going to go out with, because we change with interactions with people, which is why we have conversations like this, so that I can become more, get a better perspective. But when you place everything outside of yourself, then it's a nice excuse. Oh, it's not a tree of value. It's a file folder of excuses. That was a terrible metaphor, but
it works.
It works. And you can just pull out an excuse for everything when and obscure it because, I'm not successful because of this. It's like, well, there are times, like, I definitely internalize more than I definitely need to, but I find it a lot more helpful for someone to say, no, you're being too hard on yourself, pull back, because it forces me to work harder on the things. And that maybe is something I think I got too many bad examples when I was young, and I got all these negative examples, which forced me to be like, okay, I can't do that, because if I do that, I'm going to end up like this. And that was helpful for me. I got lucky. And I think that's my advice, but you said it very well there.
Thank you.
So, I think we're coming up on close to the end. So, sure. any final thoughts that you want to give us about, this life coaching, self-leadership? You mentioned that self-leadership was kind of a key concept to this. Mm-hmm. So why don't we end on that idea? Let's take us through that, and then we'll adjourn. So
sure.
What do you mean by self-leadership?
Yeah, I mean, the book that I will gladly cite for everyone to read on your own, and you're more than welcome to help me, or hit me up to navigate the book if you really want to apply the concepts to your own life. Self-leadership is the first to ask, right, where am I headed? Right, what do I even want? Because as David Allen says in his book, Getting Things Done, there are two main problems with people are, number one, you know what you want, you don't know how to get it. Or two, you don't know what you want. And, I can throw all sorts of leadership cliches at you, like vision without action is a dream.
Oh, yeah, but none of that means anything.
Action without vision is a nightmare, right? Like distractions don't help you, but people keep seeming to indulge in them, right? And so really, I mean, maybe the first question to ask yourself is, what kind of legacy am I trying to leave? Or what am I leaving? What kind of legacy am I leaving right now? Right? It's not to be morbid, but to ask yourself, well, what would people remember me for if I happen to die tomorrow? Right? What would they say about you? Oh, he was a good guy, he was friendly, but would they really say, wow, I'm inspired to follow his path because I believe he was onto something, right? One fun example I gave in another podcast was people want to leave a legacy and the way, they have a certain way they want to be remembered. And then sometimes they try strong arming people into thinking of them that way. Like the example I'll give is when I was in Prague, I went to the Communist Museum, which is pricey, but very much worth it. And I learned that Stalin had ordered that a statue be made in his likeness. And the sculptor that was basically coerced into making the sculpture committed suicide afterward. And I say this not to sound funny, but this is not the way you want to leave a legacy, right? When someone's like, I can't believe I left this abomination into the world, and there's like, I can't live with myself for having done this.
Yeah, right? Stalin he's got a bunch of stories like that. My favorite was always he considered a meeting a failure if the person he was having a meeting with didn't, involuntarily relieve themselves in his chair. So this is the kind of person he was, but so that's not a surprising story.
Even better, they took the statue down later. There's like, nah, we don't want this up here. And what is he going to do? Like, he's dead now, right? It's just but the idea is, the thought is, well, where's my life headed? Right? Like, what is the trajectory of my life? What if I keep doing what I'm doing now? Where will that take me? Do I like where that's going? No. Okay. Well, what do I need to change? In order to really, what do I even want? Right? Where do I want my life to head instead? Yeah.
For me, I don't know. I was influenced by like 90s science fiction a lot.
Oh, it's fun.
And for me, there was this one character in this show I used to love, and they just asked, there's like the two characters, and they just would always ask all the kids, like, who are you and what do you want? And and they were always going around, and with one character went around to all like the big shots in the show and was like, what do you want? And they were like, that's a stupid question. Blah, 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 blah. And they all answered it except for like one very incorrectly and very poorly. I want this great empire. And it's just like, and then he got it. And it was the worst thing that he had ever had. And I kind of grew up with this, like, wait, what do I want? And I'm like sitting there thinking, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. And like, until I found it, and what I want wasn't a thing. It was a path. And that path was informed by who I am. And these are very basic questions, but if you can start to answer them, then you are starting down a good path, and your answer reflects where you are now. But you don't have to have just one answer. I want a lot of things, and you're allowed to want. It doesn't say anything bad about you, and it's informed by your perception of yourself. And if you have like imposter syndrome, well, then what do you want? Well, I want to be more than what I am, and that's, I want to be something. I want to be me, but bigger. Who I am becomes more. So, and I think it's scary because it takes effort and it takes courage, and conflict is inherent in everything we do. I have to plug in my microphone. It's like, which way does it go?
Yeah, I can't fit this USB port. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow.
Yeah. There's
And
conflict
so-
between Apple and Microsoft. You're like, why can't you play
it's-
nicer?
why can't I? And is conflict inherent in everything? But how we resolve it says a lot about who we are.
Absolutely.
And what we want informs how we approach those conflicts, I think. And so I think that's my 2 cents on this. But so any final 2 cents from you? I think you gave some really good ones. I don't want to leave it on my words here. So.
No, that's fine. No, happy to do my part in adding value to your platform and your audience. I think, just to tie back into the original question was just to say, hey, how do you lead yourself well? And it's just to really, the simple next action is to just generate awareness, write down things that are on your mind, ask yourself. With designing your life, they ask people to gauge their lives in work, health, play, and love. And they say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing in these? If you're at a 7 at work, great. How can you make it an 8? What would you experiment to really get your work life to a point where you're excited to wake up every morning and you see people you're excited to work alongside and you're doing work that is immensely satisfying to you? What would it take to get there? And then to understand that it is an iterative process, that, what worked for you 5 years ago will not work for you now. And what works for you now will not work for you 5 years from now. Health is a very different priority in your 20s versus 40s. What you define as love in your 20s is different than when you're in your 40s. And, to be able to take time to be intentional in how you reflect on these things, if you're able to pull yourself away from distractions like Candy Crush and, other social media things that are well-meaning, but ultimately aren't, helpful to your own
Certain
agenda.
Websites that are not PG.
That's on the table for sure. If you're able to do this and you get some people around you who genuinely want what's best for you, right? Those friends that are willing to check your blind spots, those friends that are willing to challenge you when you are deluding yourself, that's great. If you're able to do that for yourself, I think, we'll all be able to kind of lift up the standard that we're all living by. And that's a good thing, because we understand that when everyone's a 10, everyone's a 0, but that just means that's when we're able to raise the floor, then that means we have to raise the ceiling as well. And I can only imagine what life will look like if everybody were willing to challenge the status quo and things that ultimately, we've let on go for too long just because of tradition or, just things that we just are familiar comforts that ultimately are destructive. That we just don't want to give up in order to grow up.
That's well put. So with that, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It was actually this is kind of a bit of a blind date for me. Chris set this all up. So it was kind of good though. If you guys like this, definitely comment down in the comments section. My brain's turning into oatmeal very quickly, so I'm gonna have to go. Remember to share if you like it, or just like and subscribe as everyone else on YouTube says. And you guys have a good day, and bientôt.